Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including one of my favorites, NYPD Law and Disorder. Before we get started, let's go to the news of the pages of the New York Post. An Ecuadorian illegal alien charged with raping a 13-year-old girl he bound and gagged in a Queens park told the cops he recorded the attack, prosecutors alleged Wednesday. The chilling admission by Christian Giovanni Ingalandi, 25 years old, broke the silence in an otherwise hushed court hearing in which he was arraigned on charges of rape, predatory sexual assault, kidnapping, and a list of other felonies from the shocking June 13th attack in Casino Park. The Post first reported that an immigration judge in 2022 ordered him to leave the country. So again, here we go again. I hate to beat a dead horse, but we've let predators into this country, and unfortunately they're starting to take their hold and commit crimes and sexual assaults, and until we start deporting these people and holding them accountable, and holding the people accountable that let them in the first place, this isn't going to stop. The NYPD honored some of New York's finest at an awards ceremony Tuesday, including Medal of Honor for the one-time super rookie cop who gunned down a career criminal who killed two other cops. Summit Salon has since been promoted to detective, receiving a rousing standing ovation as NYPD Commissioner Eddie Caban placed the medal around his neck for stopping cop killer LaShawn McNeil dead in his tracks during a domestic dispute in Harlem on January 21st, 2022. McNeil, 47 years old, was shot just moments after killing hero cops Wilbert Mora and Jason Rivera. So the NYPD has Medal Day, and it's usually, guys, for the Combat Cross, Medal of Valor, and I think I've spoken to that on my podcast and my other books. NYPD cops, every cop you see is going to have some type of medals. The guys that are in heavy stuff, like the solid blue bar or the green bar, the Combat Cross, those guys walk into the room. It's like Clint Eastwood in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. They get respect from everybody. I've seen cops with those medals walk through, like around Coney Island or something. There's a million cops around. Cops just get out of their way. It's like parting the Red Sea because they're respected that much. A heavily armed Queens man who shared extreme jihadist views. Extreme? Aren't jihadist views extreme within themselves? But okay, New York Post. Was busted in his ghost car early Wednesday, with sources say they feared the nut was planning something bad. Judge Sanson was taken into custody around 1:30 a.m. with cops finding a loaded 9mm pistol, 9 loaded magazines, an NYPD vest, so that's probably stolen, handcuffs, or someone's got a lot of explaining to do, 2 axes, a stun gun, multiple knives, a weighted whip with an extendable baton, along with NYPD uniform items, NYPD Chief Jeffrey McNatty said at a press conference. So I read that. I've read up on this guy a little bit. He definitely was looking to cause somebody harm. I think he's a lone wolf. I don't think he was a part of an organization. I think he's from another country. I think they said Jamaica. And, a guy like that is so difficult. He's not part of an organization. So if he's sitting there going online, reading this stuff and becoming radicalized, he doesn't have ties to a terrorist organization, so he's not going to show up on phone taps. He's not going to show up on lists. So thank God the cops did their job and proactive police work, and they were able to stop this guy before. And I saw the photos of the things they recovered. I mean, he could have hurt a lot of people. So this story is going to tie into what we're going to talk about today. A pricey Porsche flew over the side of a Bronx parking garage Sunday, landing below in a pile of crushed metal with wads of cash found on top of it, according to photos and cops. It's unclear if anyone was in the sports car at the time, but police said it ended up flying out the window of a garage on BJ's Optical on West 237th Street in the North Bronx about 11:40 a.m., knocking through a concrete wall and landing 15 feet below. So this happened in my old precinct, the 50th precinct in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. If memory serves me correctly, this parking garage is right alongside the Major Deegan Expressway. It's a couple of things. It It could be just someone was on drugs or drunk and didn't know what they were doing and shot out the thing and climbed away before the cops got there. Or someone's trying to send a message to somebody. One drug dealer is screwing around with another one and launches the car. Maybe they put a cinder block on the gas pedal. I don't know, but I did see photos and it looked weird. It almost looked strategically placed, that there were wads of cash on top. The car was flipped upside down, and there were wads of cash sitting balls dead center on the car, and it looked like, and from the photo it looked like hundreds. So I don't know. I don't leave that kind of money in my car. I'm thinking drugs. So today's topic is going to be tow truck drivers and parking garages. And having worked in the auto crime division for 10 out of my 20 years and always being involved in stolen cars, cops have a relationship with tow truck drivers and garage attendants. You just do. Some are better than others. It's been my experience 90% of the time, people that own towing companies or parking garages, they're heartless people. It's F you, pay me. They don't care. The bank said if anybody's in here after 9 o'clock at night, we're towing your car, and they're going to hold it hostage. And a lot of times, in addition to towing your car and holding it hostage, what these guys do is they rummage through it, and then days later you realize your sunglasses are missing, and it's not even worth getting it back. But I am not a fan, and I've got a lot of stories about dealing with parking garages and towing companies. So I go to the auto crime division, and I get a phone call from a retired NYPD sergeant that's working for one of the rent-a-car companies. I forget which one, Avis, Hertz, or whatever. And a lot of retired cops get these jobs, director of security of these companies. So he calls the auto crime division. He goes, I got a bit of a problem. And I says, well, what's wrong? He says, one of our rent-a-cars has been reported stolen since February. So let's just say, for argument's sake, we're in August. It's 6 months ago. I said, okay. He goes, it was stolen in February. He goes, I get a phone call from this parking garage in Midtown Manhattan, and the owner of the parking garage tells me, we have your car. Come down and get it. You owe us $3,000 or $5,000, whatever it was. And I says, well, he can't do that. He says, I know that. If the car is reported stolen, all bets are off. Nobody owes anybody anything. It's one thing if you leave your car in a parking lot and you never recover and you never go and get it out, what'll happen is you'll rack up charges, and if they can't get a hold of you, or even if they do get a hold of you, they say, you got to pay to get it out. And you say, I don't have the money. So in New York, I don't know how it works in other places, what the garage will do is they will put what's called a mechanic's lien on the vehicle, meaning that you owe this money, and if you don't pay this lien, the court gives you X amount of days, and if you don't pay the towing or the storage costs, they get to keep the car. The title gets flipped to them. It's a whole process, but they get to keep your car essentially if you don't pay the storage fees. Now, if a car is stolen and winds up in a parking lot, all bets are off. It's stolen. They're the victim of a crime. They didn't put it there, right? There's no legal contract in a parking lot unless you have a legal contract where you're paying monthly. But if it's one of these places where people come in and out, car is stolen. The insurance company or even the owner of the car is not responsible for those charges. And you're not going to get it out of the thief. So essentially the parking garage or parking lot has to eat it. So he says, I tried talking to this guy, he says, and he's not budging. He says, I'd appreciate it if you could, just go down there and explain this guy. I go, well, he's in violation of the law. I said, okay. So me and the sergeant go down to this, and it was over by the New York Times building in Midtown. Large parking, it was actually in a building. And we go down there. And it's taken forever to get a hold of the owner. And the owner calls up and he's like, I'm not coming. He just starts giving me crap. No, that car, they owe me $5,000. And I said, you're going to have to come down here. So after about an hour, I'm tied up with this thing. The owner comes down and he's just belligerent. I'm not getting the car out, blah, 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 blah. And we found the car in the parking lot. So what he did was he found this car. He rummaged through it, found an insurance card, saw it was the insurance company, the car belonged to a rent-a-car company. So rent-a-car companies are self-insured. They don't have other people's insurance. They're self-insured. So what this parking lot owner did was he called the company and said, you owe me $3,000 or $5,000, I'm not letting the car go. So now here we are. And I says, you can't do that, and you're going to wind up getting locked up. He goes, I don't care. I'll hire a lawyer. I says, well, this is what we're going to do. I says, because I really tried being nice with this guy for about 45 minutes and it was going nowhere. I says, what I'm going to do is, I says that this car is coming with us. Hell or high water, it's coming with us. And then he wouldn't provide us with the keys. He goes, well, I don't know where the keys are. And I was working with the guy from the rent-a-car company to get an additional set of keys. But at the time, the parking lot guy is like, I don't know where the keys are. And I says, well, this car is coming with us at some point during the day. I says, whether you come with it or not is a different story. And he goes, oh, yeah? I said, yeah. I says, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I says, I'm locking you up. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to take 2 police cars and we're going to block your parking garage so no cars get in and out. And then I'm going to go down to Manhattan District Attorney's office. I'm going to get a search warrant to get the car out. I saw it. It's here. And you're not letting me take it out, and you're not providing the keys. I says, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to get a search warrant. And I says, you're coming with the car. You know, he cursed at me for 15 minutes, yada, yada, yada. He produced the keys, and I got the car out. So a lot of times these parking lots, they hold the car hostage. Another time something like this happened was a couple of years later. I'm in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. I'm in auto crime. And we used to go through parking. We would get tips. A lot of times our informants would tell us where people would park stolen cars. And probably by about the mid-90s, LoJack came on the scene. And then, you know, after LoJack, GPSs and stuff. So the car thieves weren't bringing the stolen cars directly to a body shop or a chop shop or putting it in a shipping container because we were picking them off and making arrests. So what they wound up doing was they would park stolen, and they still do it, they park stolen vehicles in 24-hour parking lots to let them cool off. If the cops recover the car, all right, great, we didn't take the arrest, we'll go out and steal another car. If after a couple of days the cops don't pull the car out of there or find it, what they do is they go back and get it and do whatever they're going to do with the car. Also, what a lot of people do is they'll park cars like insurance jobs. So say, for argument's sake, someone's got a car, the lease is up, and their kid threw up in the back seat and they're 5,000 miles over the mileage and they're going to get dinged, or somebody gets in over their head with a car payment. You can't just give the car back. The finance company is not going to want to hear it. So what they'll do is they'll just take a car and park it in long-term parking somewhere at the airport or just even a 24-hour parking lot. They'll just park it in there. They'll wait a couple of days. They'll report it stolen. And then chances are that vehicle's not going to get recovered within 30 days. So what'll happen is after 30 days, the insurance company writes a check and they step away from the payments on the car because, quote unquote, they were the victim of a crime. And then we would pull the car out and then we would work backwards. When did the car come in? Were there photographs of the person that dropped off the car? Did someone sign something? You subpoena their phone records. Were they at that parking lot? So I'm not trying to give anybody any ideas, but if you're going to park your car in a 24-hour lot, especially with the technology is today, that ship has sailed. You're not going to get away with it. So anyway, we had an informant tell us that there was a couple of stolen cars in this parking lot up in Riverdale. My partner and I go up there. It was just before the holidays. And we go into the parking lot, and there's a stolen Volvo and a stolen Montero. And the Volvo was there for a while, and the Montero was there for a while. The Volvo had just come in. So and on the Montero, it had the yellow boot, so you can't drive the car. It's like an immobilizing device that they'll slap on either side of the tire so you can't drive it. It's made out of steel. So the parking attendant is telling me, I don't know. The boss said I can't give the car to anybody. It's with the police. Car is stolen. Give us the car. I don't know. I got the keys for the Volvo, but I can't give you the keys to the Montero. So I get the keys to the Montero, but now so I get on the phone with the owner, and he's like, well, I don't have the key for the boot, and that car owes me a lot of money. I go, it's stolen. We're taking it. Well, I don't have the keys for the boot. I don't know what to tell you. So we would carry tools in the trunk of our car for special occasions like this, and all you really need is a crowbar to get that off. I mean, you'll probably need a wheel alignment, but if you get a crowbar between that boot and you just work it, you can pry it off. So I got the boot off, and then I walked in and I lobbed it, and it's heavy. I lobbed it into the office. The attendant jumped like 3 feet. He had his back to me, and I just kind of lobbed it in there. I said, tell your boss I found his boot. So, like I was saying, these parking attendants and parking garages and towing companies, they will hold your car for hostage, and they have no soul. And this is the top story of this. So it's the early 90s. My partner and I are driving around Broadway. I'm in uniform. It was a Saturday. I'll never forget. And there's these two young women in nun outfits, with the habits and everything. And they're on Broadway, probably about 230th Street. And they're flagging us down. And I look at my partner and I go, what the hell is this? So our precinct had two colleges. You had Manhattan College and the College of Mount St. Vincent. So you had a lot of young kids in fraternities and sororities, and they were always doing stupid shit, either streaking or stealing salt and pepper shakers out of the dime, nickel and dime kiddie stuff. So I thought it was a sorority prank with these two young nuns waving us down. And one is in tears. And I says, well, what's wrong? And she says, we got our car towed, and they're not letting me get it back, and they want $100 for it, and Mother Superior will be most upset. So I'm like, are you kidding me? And she's like, no, I'm not kidding you. So the story was these two nuns lived on a convent up in Westchester County, and Mother Superior went away for the weekend. I don't know where Mother Superior went, but Mother Superior went away for the weekend. These two nuns got the keys to Mother Superior's car and stole it. They came down the Deegan, they got off in Riverdale, they parked in an Italian restaurant on Broadway, which probably had one of those signs that says, if you're not eating at Louis', we're going to tow your car if you're not patronizing our restaurant. Well, they're nuns, they don't get out much, I'm guessing. So they park in Louis', that's not the name of the restaurant, by the way, and they do a little bit of shopping. They come back to get their car. It's nowhere to be found. So now I've got two panicked nuns. They tell me that they took a cab over to the parking garage, and the guy is not budging, and he wants $100. And this is the early 90s. I don't think there were ATM machines, or if they were, I didn't have an ATM card, and certainly the nuns didn't have an ATM card. So and they were crying, especially one was really carrying on. So I said, all right, get in the back seat. Let's go over this tow company. So most towing companies, it's always the same, especially on the weekends. They tend to be in out-of-the-way places. It's usually a trail, or it's in the middle of the property because they don't want you to be bothered. And they got dogs patrolling the property in case someone wants to jump the fence and cut the lock and take the car. So I'm outside the fence, calling the phone number. No one's answering, so I start boop, 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 hitting the siren on the RMP. And trailer opens. This heavy-set Spanish guy comes walking out, eating a slice of pizza, and his fly is open. Okay, whatever. So he comes to the gate, and he goes, yeah. I says, you towed, and it was like a little Oldsmobile or whatever. I says, you towed the two nuns' car? He goes, yep. They were parked in Louis' parking lot. I go, come on. They're nuns. He goes, what do you want me to tell you, pal? I says, you're Catholic, right? He goes, Spanish. He goes, yeah. So he goes, what does that mean? I go, come on, you're going to go to hell if you take these two nuns' cars. He goes, $100. So I said, I don't believe this guy. So I said, all right, we'll be back. So the nun's just like, oh, is he going to give us the car? I said, no, not without $100. I says, let me see what I can do. So I go into the precinct. I go into my locker. I think I had like $50. My partner had $30. And then I scrounged up $100. And she's like, I will pay you back. I promise to pay you back. I says, all right. So we go back to the tow yard, hitting the siren again. The guy comes out. He goes, I hope you got the money. I said, I got the money. So I give him the money. The nuns get the car. We take it out. And I says, you're going to pray for him? She goes, no, I'm not praying for him, which I thought was funny. So she says, please give me your phone number. I'm going to get the money back to you. I promise. I don't know how, but I will. I said, no, sister, it's okay. Don't worry about it. She says, no, you borrowed some of that money, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to get you the $100. So I give her my phone number. And, they're so happy, and they leave. And they go back up to Westchester County, and they drop off Mother Superior's car, and she doesn't find out, and no harm, no foul. So if anybody out there is watching this podcast, whenever you lend money to somebody, and I don't care if it's $100,000 or $10, there's always a story, and it's always a pain in the ass to get the money back, especially from the clergy. So I don't hear anything. I write it off, right? And at the time, I was in my early 20s. I had just gotten to the precinct, so I was a kid. I was in my early 20s. I was still living with my parents, looking for an apartment. And when you live with your parents, they're into your business, right? And this is before cell phones. There's one phone in the house. It's on the wall. And my dad was a ball buster. If you read any of my books, you know he was like what's his name? And Everybody Loves Raymond, Frank Barone on Everybody Loves Raymond. That was my father. Same thing with the sarcasm. Look at the bust balls. So I come home one day, and my father's got this big shit-eating grin, and I know he wants to bust my balls, and I just kind of go by him, and he goes, Sister Samantha called. And I said, oh. And I said, okay. And I didn't give him, I guess, the reaction he wanted. He goes, Sister Samantha. And I go, like a Motown singer, I go, Dad, she's a nun. She's not black. And he goes, oh, Vic, I don't care who you date. Wait, did you say a nun? I said, yeah. He goes, why is a nun calling here? I says, I lent her money. And then that was a whole thing. Why are you lending nuns money? And I'm like, Dad, just let it go. So I get a hold of this phone number. And I call this convent, and I ask for Sister Samantha, and she gets on the phone. It's like a spy movie. She's like whispering in the phone. She's like, all right, probably on Thursday. And she gives me directions to this park, and I'm supposed to meet her in this park near the convent up in Westchester County, like on a after work, like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock near this, by a babbling brook near this convent in a park. I was like, okay, like a spy movie. I get there. I'm sitting on this park bench. And out pops this nun. She comes walking. She's got this big smile on her face, and it's like a mob movie. She handed me an envelope filled with $100, and she goes, "I really want to thank you. You know, I can't thank you enough." And I said, "No, it's all right." And I mean, she was a young woman in her early 30s, and looked a hell of a lot younger. And I asked her, I'll never forget. I said, Are you happy with the choices that you've made in your life? And she goes, oh, absolutely. You know, I'm serving God and all that. And she goes, are you happy with the choices you've made? And I go, yeah, absolutely. I'm having the time of my life. I love being a New York City cop. And I probably have told this story before, but so that case that I worked on where we were getting 30 cars a month shipped to China, our main thief, this guy Mario Lopez, used to be a doorman. And he made friends with this guy on the Upper East Side who was a parking garage attendant. And parking garage attendants don't make much money. And Mario wanted to steal 8-10 cars at a time. So we're listening to Wiretap, so we hear in the conversation. He calls his buddy up, and he goes, how would you like to make $3,000? And the guy goes, yeah, great. What do I do? And he says, this is what I need you to do. Me and a bunch of guys, we're going to come up to the parking garage Thursday night. What we're going to do is you show us where the keys are. We're going to steal 8-10 cars. We're going to tie you up. We'll put you in the trunk of a car right near the front. Give us about 20 minutes or a half hour. Then just start yelling and screaming and banging on the trunk. Someone will come let you out. And then you just tell the cops when they show up it was a bunch of guys in ski masks. The guy goes, yeah, no problem. So we have a surveillance van parked across the street from this place. I think it was on 96 or 97th Street, if memory serves me correctly, right off the FDR Drive. So what happens is we're watching. And Mario pulls up with a van. These 8 guys get out. They go into the parking garage. 15 minutes later, you see, boom, 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 all the cars drive out. The last car was in Brooklyn, in the warehouse in Brooklyn. Like the gate goes down in Brooklyn, and then the 911 call goes on. So they stole the cars in Manhattan, drove out to Brooklyn, and then the 911 call comes in. And then the 19th precinct shows up, and we don't tell them because Macy's don't tell Gimbals. We didn't tell them, say anything to them. And that night, Mario calls up like one of his lieutenants, and he says, I think it was his uncle. He says, listen, did you sweep those cars for LoJack and GPS? And the guy said, yeah. He goes, no, just did you? And he goes, yeah. And they didn't. And that's kind of what blew our case wide open, because what winds up happening is the tracking device, I think it was a LoJack, starts pinging inside our where the cars are getting shipped on Metropolitan Avenue in Brooklyn, and then the cops from that precinct, like heroes, go rushing in, and they blow the case wide open. And then Janine Pirro from the Westchester County DA's office wanted everyone's head, but you know, NYPD is just so big. There's so many units, but we got everybody. So anyway, that's my stories about parking lots and garage attendants. Hopefully I'll think of more at another time. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my friends in Chicago, Illinois, Suffern, New York, Falls Church, Virginia, Utica, New York, and Hilo, Hawaii. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background and would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. If you enjoyed the content, check out my Amazon author page. Type in my name, Vic Ferrari Like the Car, where you can preview all my books for free, including NYPD Law and Disorder. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys next week.